Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 2,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
It is frustrating watching this injury list grow every single day and wondering whether Santa Clara is simply putting out fires as they come. But underneath all of those individual names, a far more calculated process is actually unfolding. Short-term contracts, revealing roster cuts, a proven veteran testing his body just up the road, and a clear, deliberate effort to protect this roster's biggest stars before the real games ever begin in September. Today, we are going behind the scenes to separate genuine emergency reactions from real deliberate planning, because these quiet August decisions often end up determining who is actually still standing come January. Wednesday's transaction sheet might look modest on the surface, but it genuinely reveals a very specific strategy for how this front office is managing camp right now. San Francisco signed veteran receiver Kadarel Hodge and veteran edge rusher Ogbo Okoronkwo to one-year contracts while releasing defensive lineman Kevin Givens and Cameron Sample to make room. Every single one of those names is moving for a specific, calculated reason. The overall goal here is redistributing practice reps, protecting the health of the players who matter most, and continuously reading the true health of this roster on a day-by-day basis. Start with Hodge, because his specific role here is genuinely clear-cut. At 31 years old, he arrives as a proven veteran whose biggest value lives almost entirely on special teams. He made a Pro Bowl with Atlanta back in 2024, and has bounced through stops with the Rams, Browns, Lions, and Falcons throughout his career. Across 118 career games, he has caught 67 passes for 1,026 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those numbers are never going to put him anywhere near the top of this passing game's target hierarchy, but they absolutely show he can handle real, legitimate offensive snaps when this roster genuinely needs him to. With so many receivers currently unavailable, his immediate job is simple: absorb meaningful August practice work without forcing this team's top options to carry every single rep themselves. Okoronkwo represents a different flavor of roster insurance entirely. A former fifth-round pick out of Oklahoma, originally selected by the Rams, he was limited to just a single game last season with the Eagles due to a triceps injury. But back in 2024 with the Browns, he recorded 3 sacks across 16 games, and his career totals sit at 17 sacks and 31 tackles for loss across 81 total games. He is not walking into this building as some kind of miracle fix for this pass rush. He is simply an experienced, proven pass rusher who can genuinely compete for a defined role while this coaching staff continues evaluating exactly who is truly ready to contribute this season. Sample's release might actually be the most interesting single detail buried inside this entire round of transactions. The optimistic read here is that San Francisco's defensive end room is finally getting healthy enough that this coaching staff felt comfortable letting a roster spot go before preseason games sharpen the overall evaluation process. Givens' departure similarly creates room to reshuffle the calculus inside that defensive tackle rotation as well. That is genuinely how this front office's internal board operates behind closed doors. Every single arrival reveals a specific need, and every single departure reveals exactly where these coaches believe they already have enough depth. Hodge protects this offense through the grind of camp. Okoronkwo raises the level of competition off the edge. Real practice reps will ultimately decide whether this specific roster engineering created genuine, lasting depth or simply some temporary breathing room heading into the season. While John Lynch continues reorganizing the bottom portion of this roster, there is a familiar veteran working out just a few miles away from Santa Clara who genuinely deserves to enter this conversation. Veteran tight end Zach Ertz has reportedly been training over at Stanford alongside his former college quarterback Andrew Luck, continuing his recovery from a torn ankle. According to respected NFL insider Adam Schefter, Ertz has already been fully cleared for all football activities and genuinely intends to play again this season. For now, that simple geographic proximity puts his name squarely on the radar here. Any real move by San Francisco would obviously still require genuine mutual interest and a full, thorough medical evaluation before anything gets done. Ertz is 35 years old now, so nobody should reasonably expect the exact same player who once stacked Pro Bowl selections during the absolute peak of his career. But he still produced 504 yards and 4 touchdowns for Washington just last season, real, meaningful production for a player at that stage of his career. For a team that has learned the hard way this camp exactly how much one single position group absence can reshape an entire offensive game plan, that kind of recent proven production genuinely deserves a real look. Tight end George Kittle has shown encouraging signs pointing toward a real Week 1 return, but he did miss half of last season with a lingering hamstring issue. Betting this team's entire offensive plan on an assumption that the whole schedule unfolds without a single additional scare would be an expensive kind of overconfidence. But here is the part of this specific storyline nobody should overlook. Ertz's real value incentives would make real sense if Ertz is genuinely willing to compete purely as a veteran rotational piece and legitimate insurance policy behind Kittle. If he is looking for some kind of guaranteed starting job elsewhere, Santa Clara is probably not the right final destination for him. But San Francisco genuinely has real, tangible factors working in its favor here. Stanford sits right in this same region. Ertz could remain in a genuinely familiar part of the country, and he would get a real chance to compete for an ambitious, contending team without having to carry an entire tight end room entirely by himself. That kind of local access is exactly what makes this specific situation genuinely worth watching closely behind the scenes. Lynch would not have to make any kind of blind offer here either. He can simply watch the actual workouts, speak directly with his own medical staff, and find out exactly how much mobility, strength, and confidence has genuinely returned following that injury. The name itself carries real appeal, but his actual body and his genuine willingness to accept a purely complementary role are what will ultimately decide everything here. Wednesday's actual practice gave us the least comfortable real-time snapshot of exactly how thin this roster's margin has become. Nick Bosa, Osa Odigizua, and Dre Greenlaw all sat out with general soreness, which genuinely reads as smart, precautionary workload management rather than anything alarming. The louder concern comes from some brand new absences. Offensive lineman Carver Willis has entered the concussion protocol. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk is dealing with a finger injury. Receiver Jacob Cowing is nursing a hip flexor issue, and offensive lineman Brett Toth was also held out, though the specific reason there was not disclosed. Cowing in particular is operating on a genuinely different clock than most of his teammates right now. With Mike Evans, Dejon Stribling, and Christian Kirk all still sidelined, there is real, meaningful room for a young receiver to seize a genuine opportunity. But Cowing cannot claim that specific opening from the sideline. Fellow receiver Junior Bergen continues pushing hard from behind him on the depth chart, and Cowing's own injury history genuinely reduces the amount of patience typically extended to a still developing young player. A hip flexor issue can realistically cost a player several weeks, even in a relatively mild case, and the actual recovery timeline here will ultimately determine exactly how much this specific roster competition shifts as a result. The absences of Willis and Toth also hit an already struggling second-team offensive unit particularly hard. With this many players sidelined simultaneously, a significant number of those practice reps are genuinely going to third- and fourth-string players. Execution naturally slips in that environment, real evaluation becomes noisier and less reliable, and even the quarterback himself loses a clean, consistent picture of exactly who should be doing what on a given play. That is the hidden, often overlooked cost of an overcrowded training room. It does not simply remove raw talent from the field. it also genuinely distorts the entire evaluation environment this coaching staff relies on to make final roster decisions. There was at least one genuinely positive development to report, though. Rookie defensive tackle Grayson Halton returned to practice after missing several sessions with a bone bruise in his knee, restoring one real piece back to that rotation while the rest of the group continues being carefully managed. At the center of this entire preservation conversation sits running back Christian McCaffrey. He enters his 10th NFL season fresh off leading this entire league with a career-high 413 total touches in 2025. He turned that enormous workload into 2,126 total scrimmage yards, 17 touchdowns, and a genuine Comeback Player of the Year award. A truly monumental response after appearing in just 4 total games back in 2024. At 30 years old now, he has shown zero visible signs of decline through this camp so far. The real ongoing challenge here is refusing to confuse pure excellence with actual invulnerability. Assistant head coach Chris Forster, currently serving as this team's interim head coach while Kyle Shanahan continues recovering from injuries sustained in a car accident he has since acknowledged was his own fault, said McCaffrey has looked genuinely decisive early in camp, is running hard downhill with real conviction, and is bringing an intensely focused, no-nonsense approach into this season. That report is genuinely exciting because it speaks directly to real explosive ability and mental clarity, not simply solid physical conditioning. But it also raises this coaching staff's overall responsibility here. When a genuine superstar looks fully ready to handle absolutely everything asked of him, the natural temptation to simply ask him to do exactly that tends to creep back in. San Francisco genuinely plans to manage McCaffrey's overall workload more carefully this season, but that specific plan has already hit a real snag behind the scenes. Rookie running back Kalon Black is currently dealing with an adductor injury, while Jordan James continues working his way back from a fractured rib. Both players are directly competing for that primary backup running back role, and they should genuinely be absorbing the exact practice reps McCaffrey does not actually need to be taking on himself. With both of them sidelined simultaneously, other backs on this roster do get some real development time, but this coaching staff genuinely loses a valuable opportunity to properly test its best actual candidates under ideal practice conditions, and to learn who can truly help ease that overall burden once the real season arrives, and that 413-touch workload risks turning from a genuine tribute into a real operational warning sign. McCaffrey can absolutely keep dominating at 30 years old. His talent, his preparation, and everything shown through this camp so far genuinely support that belief. But San Francisco simply cannot afford to build another entire campaign around the underlying assumption that he alone has to solve every single third down, every late game series, and every single week where injuries hit the players around him. Properly preserving him does not mean taking the football away from this roster's best player when an actual game is genuinely on the line. It means finding somebody else on this roster capable of reliably handling 10 or 12 genuinely useful plays before the scoreboard eventually forces this offense to lean on McCaffrey for absolutely everything. The eventual returns of Black and James genuinely deserve just as much attention this camp as any single spectacular McCaffrey run in August. Every single missed practice day for either of them delays the real answer this coaching staff needs locked in before September arrives. Exactly who keeps this offense functional while Christian gets a genuine chance to rest. So faithful, sound off down in the comments with Protect CMC if you also genuinely believe this team's championship window depends on managing his workload intelligently all season long. The best version of Christian McCaffrey still looks every bit as special as ever. Now this roster simply has to prove it knows how to help him arrive fully whole once the games truly demand everything he has to give. Everything happening quietly behind the scenes in Santa Clara right now is delivering essentially the same underlying message through a bunch of different individual moves. Raw talent alone is simply not enough once genuine availability starts dictating how an entire training camp unfolds. Hodge and Okoronkwo provide real, immediate breathing room. Ertz could become genuinely valuable. Experienced insurance at tight end. Cowing is fighting a real ticking clock. And McCaffrey needs a genuine plan in place that properly preserves his power for the truly decisive stretch of this season. The encouraging part in all of this is that San Francisco's front office is clearly reading these signals correctly. The real demand now is turning all of those individual signals into genuine, lasting solutions before September makes those decisions for them instead. So let me know where you stand, faithful. Would you give Zach Ertz a one-year deal today specifically to help protect this offense? Answer down in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you subscribe for more behind-the-scenes 49ers training camp coverage all the way through the rest of this summer. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you in the next one. Go Niners!